Seeing her meowing cat across the shutter, Jane felt her heart start to race. The woman reluctantly opened the door and watched the cat bound into the apartment. He wasn't empty-pawed, however. The artifact he brought her was all too familiar to her. This was something she didn't want to deal with anymore. The fact that half of the neighborhood shoes were in her home seemed incriminating. Seeing the collection, Jane sighed. All she wanted was to understand what her cat was doing. Taking him to the vet had not even occurred to her because his behavior had changed so abruptly. She jumped as another meow interrupted her thoughts. Suddenly, he appeared from behind and waltzed into the cupboard. What was the reason for his obsession with shoes? It was time for this to end. When Jane realized the predicament her cat had left her in, she decided to pick up the phone and do something about it. Trying to find some answers, Jane called her local vet. As for going in person, she didn't think it was even worth it. Eventually, she got through to a qualified veterinarian and explained everything. Her assumption was that he would laugh. However, her effects were only the opposite. She was told to bring him in as soon as possible. He was acting abnormally because something wasn't right. The strangest part was yet to come. Seeing the newest shoe offered as a tribute, Jane looked down at it. There was something different about it this time. One of the high heels had something sticking out of it. It was her curiosity that drove her to reach in and pull out a slip of paper. Her body was filled with dread as she read what it said. It was inevitable that she would have to call 911. Why would her cat do something like this? It was a happy and normal life for Jane Mendez in New Mexico. Her hard work growing up was now paying off. The mother looked after her 6-year-old son, Timothy, in a cozy neighborhood. However, she could tell that something was wrong. Their lives were missing something like a puzzle piece. He was never going to see his dad again. They divorced before he was even born. In their house, Timothy would stare out the window for hours, but she wondered what he was thinking about or even looking at. She caught a glimpse of it one day. His attention was drawn to the neighbors next door. The neighbor's pets played in the backyard while he watched them. Then it dawned on her. A companion would be helpful to him. In the following months, she conducted research on adopting pets. Her son needed a perfect match, so she needed to find a way to do that. While a dog wouldn't be right for him, another animal would be perfect. As soon as Jane saw the feline staring at her from the cage, she knew she had to adopt him. He was a beautiful tabby with green eyes. All he wanted was a second chance, and she was happy to give him one. Timothy was over the moon with his new pet. He named the tabby Gary, after his favorite cartoon pet, and seemed a lot happier the next few weeks. One evening, after getting home from work, Jane tripped over something in the dimly lit hallway. She thought it was one of her son's toys, but she was shocked when she noticed that it was something else. A shoe. She recognized it as one of her own shoes from her wardrobe. She asked Timothy if he had moved it, but he denied it. Who was the culprit? After another week, things escalated. She found another shoe, but this time it wasn't hers. She was on her way to confront Timothy when she heard a meow from behind. She turned around to see Gary staring at her with his big green eyes, holding another shoe. Jane didn't understand what was going on. Was her cat behind bringing in all of the shoes? Jane had gone to the store to get some cameras for her home. She had been meaning to for a while, and this was a good enough excuse to finally get it done. One of them watched her porch, where Gary would come in from exploring during the day. If he was bringing in the shoes, then she would certainly catch him in the act. After waking up the next day, Jane excitedly jumped on her laptop and went onto her security camera app. She reviewed hours of footage, but that's when she saw something she couldn't believe. She saw her tabby coming to the house in the dead of night, but he wasn't empty-handed. He was carrying a shoe in his mouth. The cat was caught red-handed, but now there was another question on her mind. Why was he doing it? She decided that she would try to find out what her cat's new habit was all about before it was too late. Over the next few days, the shoes piled up. Jane had to find a place to stuff them while she was figuring things out. It seemed that Gary wasn't picky about what kind of shoe he stole. Jane felt her heart start to race as she stared at her meowing cat from the other side of the shutter. She reluctantly opened it and watched the feline bound into the entryway. But he didn't come empty-pawed. He had brought her an all too familiar artifact, something she didn't want any more of. She felt like it was too incriminating, having half the neighborhood shoes in her home. Jane fatefully decided to pick up her phone and try to do something about the predicament her cat had left her in. Where had he been getting all of these shoes from? But the woman had no idea what she was doing. Jane called her local vet, hoping to find some answers. She didn't think it even warranted going in person, but once she patched through to one of the qualified veterinarians, she explained everything. She assumed he would laugh, but it seemed that she only had the opposite effect. He told her to bring him in immediately. Something wasn't right, and it explained his abnormal behavior. But the weirdest thing was yet to come. Jane looked down at the newest shoe she had been offered as tribute. This time, something was different. She saw something sticking out of one of the high heels. Curiosity got the better of her, and she reached in and pulled out a slip of paper. but upon reading what it said, dread flooded her body. Jane rushed to check the other shoes. She hoped her hunch wouldn't ring true, but it seemed all too obvious now. How had her cat done something like this? She knew she'd soon have the cops knocking on her door. Jane had to call the police immediately. She just had no idea how they would react to what she had to say. They arrived on her doorstep a few minutes later, where she explained everything. She was nearly in tears as she brought them to the closet filled with shoes. She also showed them the footage of the cat bringing them home. She just hoped she wouldn't be in trouble. The police reviewed the footage and felt that it was evidence enough. They stared at Jane and Gary and did something she didn't expect. They started laughing. They told her she had adopted a cat burglar. They collected the shoes and put them in their patrol car. They assured her that they'd get all of the shoes back to their owners in due time. But there was still one thing on Jane's mind. Jane still had no idea why her cat loved to steal shoes. Her vet told her that it might have been the sweat from people that he liked. Cats are obsessed with scents, and human body odor is among one of their favorites.